There are forms, objects, and machines that belong to a collective memory and imagination that evoke happy times. For Italians, the 1957 Fiat 500 represents the infancy of the automobile. For the rest of the world, this immense little car symbolizes Italy. Sung about, illustrated, miniaturized, digitalized, and even Disneyized, this tiny, innocent little baby car has grown up to become a national monument. Very few vehicles combine under the same hood technology and emotion. Measuring 1 meter 30 centimeters in height and in width, and less than 3 meters in length, makes it the smallest mass-produced car ever made. A miniature masterpiece of economy and simplification, the Bambina is a true manufacturing miracle. The most for the least is what makes this endearing cult car more than just an automobile. F as in Fabbrica, I as in Italiana, A as in Automobili, T as in Torino. In 1922, Fiat's Lingotto factory was inaugurated in Turin by the King of Italy. It was an impressive building, 500 meters long and 5 stories high. From the assembly lines, the cars went up a series of spiral ramps to the rooftop test track. If the first little Fiat, the ancestor of our Cinquecento, was made inside these walls, it was because in 1930 Mussolini persuaded Senator Agnelli, the chairman of Fiat, to provide Italians with a car at the extraordinary price of 5,000 lire. This sensational operation aroused the interest of another dictator, a certain Hitler, who fancied himself an artist. He supposedly sketched out the German people's car himself and asked Ferdinand Porsche to create the future Volkswagen for 1,000 marks, which was marketed after the war. At the Lingotto factory, it took 4 years to design the little Fiat that put Europe on the road to modern mass production. And it showed that it takes more time to design a compact economic car than a luxury sedan. The Fiat 500's predecessor was not very innovative, but it was nice looking and reliable. And in 1936, it finally enabled Italians to get behind the wheel. A real automobile for the masses, it was the world's first mini-car to be sold far and wide. In France, it was known as the Simca 5. In Italy, it was nicknamed Topolino, a little mouse that was a big success since Italians were hungry for cars. But the Lingotto site soon became too small, and in 1939, Mussolini inaugurated the very modern Mirafiori factory in the outskirts of Turin. It was at Mirafiori that the massive strikes began in 1943, revealing the opposition of the civilian population and toppling the fascist regime. After the war, aided by the Marshall Plan, Fiat rebuilt itself. It revved up the assembly lines and threw its energy into finding a more modern but just as economic replacement for the Topolino. The company's mission was to get the new republic on the road, and Dante Giacosa, the father of the Topolino, was put in charge of designing the new car. Here was an exceptional man who, after a classical education, graduated in engineering from Turin Polytechnic and joined Fiat in 1927. Dante Giacosa worked on the engines as well as on the overall design of Fiat's cars for 45 years. For the Nuova 500, he won the Premio Compasso d'Oro in 1959, making it the first car ever to receive this prestigious industrial design award.
Il me semble utile d'expliquer le terme projet, qui sous-entend, d'habitude, l'invention, la création et l'élaboration avant la réalisation. Il s'agit d'une démarche de l'imagination rendue possible grâce à l'esthétique, la biologie, l'éthologie, la psychologie, l'ergonomie. Ces sciences ont leur importance dans le domaine automobile, comme l'architecture. Il ne faut pas qu'on puisse dire d'une automobile qu'elle est belle. Dommage qu'elle n'ait pas de cervelle.
Era necessario dare agli italiani l'automobile. Insomma, la gente desiderava l'automobile e per accontentarla era indispensabile che esistesse un'automobile a basso prezzo, evidentemente.
In the early 50s, Giacosa launched the idea of everything in the back and everything built in, a very economical concept. The R&D people at Fiat went to work on the minicar of the future.
Senz'altro i disegni che sono stati fatti in Germania, perché Fiat all'epoca aveva un centro studi anche in Germania, sono stati molto importanti per la definizione del progetto della Cinquecento, perché l'impostazione generale della forma è nata da quel progetto. Sono stati sviluppati in parallelo due modelli e poi la scelta è caduta su quello più semplice, che era questo derivato dal progetto Bauhof. Dal punto di vista invece del progetto nel suo complesso, la meccanica, il motore, le sistemazioni della vettura sono state sviluppate specificamente, perché il progetto Bauhof era molto più semplificato, era più motociclistico rispetto alla vettura come poi è stata fatta.
The only thing that interested Giacosa in the German engineer's proposal was the bodywork, inspired by the Beetle, because technically it seemed perfect for an economy car. A car for the masses, that was Fiat's top priority, and the prototypes were rapidly drawn up. But designing a new engine would take time, and that conflicted with the need to get onto the market. So Giacosa decided to employ the same design for two different models. While the minicar was being finalized, another slightly longer vehicle was built using the same base and an old engine. Thus, in 1955, the 600 was born, a combination of the past and the future. It was an immediate success. And it kept the assembly lines busy so that Giacosa could devote himself to the future 500. Along with its Giardiniero station wagon and Multipla minivan versions, the 600, though less modern than the 500, was the car that really put Italians on the road. The body of the Fiat 500 was compressed on all sides, as if it had been vacuum-packed. To emphasize its connection with the Topolino, the first 500 brought out in 1936, the little newcomer would be named the Nuova 500. Giacosa was obsessed with paring down its bodywork. He went after every unnecessary ounce. Each life-size plaster mock-up would be trimmed back even further by the ingegnere. It is not easy to describe the stylistic features of the 500 since it was so far removed from the aesthetics of the day. Some of its innovations were almost sculptural, while its form, designed to be functional, strove towards extreme simplification. And that is what makes it timeless. From the roof down to the snout, everything was sleek and smooth. The body parts were stamped using a process designed to maximize each sheet of steel. These drawings made by Giacosa show how to get the most out of the sheet metal. The sides and doors were pressed at the same time. After the exterior and interior were welded together, the metal envelope did not take a single inch away from the passenger compartment. The engine, positioned in the back to simplify the rear-wheel drive transmission, was mounted on a coil spring suspension to solve vibration problems that were typical of the 500.
Il motore presenta caratteristiche assolutamente nuove. È un 2 cilindri in linea a 4 tempi, raffreddato ad aria, silenzioso, resistentissimo. 479 cm3 di cilindrata, 13 cavalli vapore di potenza. Eccolo. L'aria per il raffreddamento è prelevata dalla griglia superiore. Un potente ventilatore la invia ai cilindri alla coppa, mentre una parte va ad alimentare il carburatore.
Sotto il cofano troviamo il serbatoio carburante, la ruota di scorta, la batteria, la borsa utensili, spazio per il bagaglio e infine i 2 tubi di ventilazione per l'interno della vettura.
For the 500, Dante Giacosa inaugurated the concept of a mass-produced self-supporting shell. Based on the same principle as the turtle shell, this rigid envelope replaced the traditional structure of a body fixed on a chassis. Another similarity with the turtle and its shell was that no space was wasted inside the 500. Every nook and cranny was filled. Just like the shellfish in their pearly shells, so smooth and shiny, like the body of our little Italian car.
Giacosa scrive che ha arrotondato al massimo le forme per utilizzare meno lamiera, che vuol dire non solo ridurre i costi ma anche ridurre i pesi, quindi fare una vettura più leggera. Le conoscenze aerodinamiche dell'epoca facevano anche pensare che una forma arrotondata fosse più aerodinamica rispetto a una forma squadrata, e strutturalmente le forme arrotondate sono più robuste, sono come le conchiglie, sono delle forme tridimensionali che sono molto più resistenti. È un oggetto col quale si ha voglia di entrare in contatto, proprio per questa morbidezza, per questo sembra quasi un gattino, sembra un piccolo animale da accarezzare. Ecco. Le forme arrotondate sono sempre molto più coinvolgenti che non le forme quadrate, tese, più rigide.
The shell had two belt lines, the classical one under the windows and a lower one extending forward from the trunk that reinforced the rigidity of the monocoque. From the side, the curve of the roof was almost symmetrical, an effect heightened by the contours of the windows. All of its surfaces were contracted to give its volume, with a clear break at the nose and the rear. It had a very nice upward slope that tapered quite sharply towards the top, almost like a pyramid. The sunroof, made of rubberized canvas attached to a fold-back frame, was fun, attractive, and practical. The first version of the Nuova 500 was fully convertible, right down to the engine trunk. This topless 500 gave way in 1959 to one with a sunroof, which would be the basic model with variations for over 20 years. The station wagon arrived in 1960. This giardiniero was very popular. The wheels were positioned on the outside, almost up against the edge of the body. This gave it a certain allure, like a tight skirt over a pair of legs, while popular cars at the time had their wheels placed under a wide-skirted body. The so-called suicide doors would be reversed in 1965 to swing open toward the front like all European cars. But they left behind unforgettable memories for the observant gentleman of ladies settling in with grace derrière first. La Signorina Tocci, Miss Italia 1957, was truly a Venus in a shell. A pure ovoid form with curving sides and rounded edges that gave stability to the frame. Vital, protective in form, the egg is the oldest universal symbol. A common figure in design, it has inspired all kinds of objects. Motion pictures and automobiles were born at the same time. But the former, which started off as popular entertainment, soon took hold of the latter, which started off as a luxury symbol. The film industry recognized the significance of little cars, shrinking them even further, simplifying and humanizing them, bringing them to the masses even before the auto industry did. The humble car, halfway between a dog and a horse, showed us on screen that a little box on wheels could transport us in so many wonderful ways. It was so alive that it had several lives, died, was reborn, and reproduced. Just like in the movies, there was a baby boom in small cars during the 40s. The Messerschmitt aircraft firm manufactured sewing machines and scooters that took themselves for cars. The Isetta was the Fiat 500's big little sister.
Alors, la fèche, oui ou non, cette priorité?
Designed by the refrigerator maker Iso Rivolta in 1953, this diminutive bubble car opened just like a fridge. But the Italians didn't go for it. With their eye for aesthetics, they believed a minimal amount of form was needed, if only for the dignity of the driver, and preferred to wait for the real thing.
Eccola!
On July the 4th, 1957, the Bambina was finally ready to venture out into the town. An inaugural parade of 500 Nuova 500s left the Mia Fiori plant and rolled through the streets of Turin, bedecked with 500 lovely Italian beauties. A festival of curves that did not fail to charm. And neither one nor the other was an ounce overweight. But upon closer inspection, when the trunk was opened up, the new 500 turned out to be quite rudimentary. Reaction to the cute little car was lukewarm because it was too austere in its minimalism. So to satisfy the customer, a little more might be needed. Fiat rushed to fix it up. A few months later, a new version was spawned. More powerful, with chrome hubcaps, roll-down windows, a real back seat that made it into a four-seater. After a difficult start, the car took off, and its extraordinary success lasted 25 years. To start the car, first put the key in the dashboard and turn it to the right. Then pull the choke between the seats, and finally lift up the electric starter. The Cinquecento begins to vibrate, and the engine kicks in with its special purr. The multifunctional Nuova 500 became a part of every Italian family. This mite-sized car could move easily through the narrow streets of congested city centres. It could conceal the identity of its passengers. One never knew who was at the wheel. Was it a student or her teacher, a worker, or his boss? It symbolised freedom and independence. There was no social pressure attached to this fabulous toy. During the 50s, the Italy of the poveri ma belli underwent a tremendous change. Due to the abundance of cheap labour from the south and a widespread demand for household goods, the country experienced a spectacular boom, the famous Italian miracle. The Nuova 500 was supposed to be the car that targeted scooter riders. In 1957, cars were still judged by their length and the thickness of their chromes.
Non posso pensare che di un altro tu sei, i tuoi baci non sono più miei, mentre ancora ti vorrei, non esiste l'amore, è soltanto una favola, mentre ridi di me, io non amo che te.
È proprio la piccola grande vettura, graziosa vero? La 500 si intende.
In the early 60s, the intrepid little Fiat 500, 500 centimeters cubed and 500 kilograms for 500,000 lira, helped bring about an incredible but logical shift in the image of the car. It became a consumer product for the whole family, like a TV, a fridge, or a washing machine. Moreover, at the time, Fiat was also making washing machines and refrigerators.
Tanti hanno un sorriso di bontà, sono allegri e sono felici. Sono tutti grandi amici, non conoscono ricchezza, ma sono ricchi di franchezza.
In tutti i modelli Fiat le stesse qualità: durata, economia, eleganza e molto, molto spazio.
In 1964, and with the help of their minicar, Italians were introduced to the joys of the motorway. They were able to head south towards the sun and their first vacation.
cosa fai? Ma perché non sorpassi, bambagia?
Ma pensi che vale la pena quel terreno là?
Conviene sempre andarlo a vedere, no? Dopo mangiato, chi ce lo proibisce? E muoviti! Io non lo so, comprano in 1000 auto e poi vanno a passo d'uomo. Adesso quello lo frego io.
Non vedi che non mette nemmeno fuori la freccia?
Ma... Delinquente, fa la butto!
Cornuto, schifoso!
Bonjour, Madame Larue. Je viens juste de la terminer. À tout à l'heure, Madame Larue. Faudrait pas non plus que ça devienne une industrie.
An Italian firm in Como, Brum, has been in the business of reproducing cars for over 30 years, and they are especially partial to the Fiat 500, with the aim of preserving a national icon. The assembly process is simpler than it was 50 years ago, but just as much care is taken. And there is more of a family atmosphere here. These teeny tiny Fiat 500s are for big kids who also like to be able to hold their cars in their hands. Reappropriation, capturing the essence, these miniatures of a miniature have inspired many artists. A reflection of its time, the Cinquecento has been incorporated into contemporary art. An exact copy recreated in cardboard by Chris Gilmore, or embedded in concrete by Armand in his long-term parking. It's probably the only car that makes you feel like you just want to protect it. It is so innocent-looking. It is very tiny, but to realize just how tiny it really is, it has to be compared to other cars. Its proportions are so perfect that, without such a comparison, its true size is hard to grasp. This little ball of metal weighs less than 500 kilograms. The Cinquecento has just been proclaimed the world's sexiest car by a British magazine whose gentlemen reporters find that behind the wheel of a little Fiat, even a nun looks seductive.
Ciao, grazie a tutti! Fermati!
Parce que l'Italie manquera toujours aux Italiens.
And because Italians will always be excited by the curves of the Bambina, whose form quite naturally belongs to Italian culture. Restored and venerated more than half a century later, the incredible Cinquecento is still a part of the urban environment. Charged with continuing the line, the Panda, so perfect in its box-like simplicity, catered to practicality rather than emotion. In later versions, over the last 10 years, the old is blended with the new to create those more appealing forms that tend to reassure. In 2007, the Fiat Nuova 500 was also revamped. This novel marketing approach for Fiat's new little baby targets internet users. The shapely curves, round headlights, chrome whiskers and double lines on the side immediately inspire empathy fueled by nostalgia. The family resemblance is undeniable and enhances its popularity. However, in terms of technology and economy, the newest version is nothing like the old. As for the eternal Bambina, it is now a legend, and it continues to roll like a true little time machine. A machine to take us back to those happy days.
Non posso pensare che di un altro tu sei, che i tuoi baci non sono più miei, mentre ancora ti vorrei, non esiste l'amore, è soltanto una favola, mentre ridi di me, io non amo che te, e se piango d'amore, non mi sento ridicolo, sono pazzo, lo so, ma il mio cuore ti darò finché un palpito avrò.